Musclehead Revolution.
There is a lot of anger out there tonight about two recent columns on terrorism and 9/11. Now, one of them asked the question, if you were a terrorist, how would you attack? It went on to say, quote, if I were a terrorist with limited resources, I'd start thinking about what really inspires fear. Arm 20 terrorists with rifles and cars and arrange to have them begin shooting randomly. Now think about this. He's writing about how to attack the United States of America. And that was written by author Stephen Levitt for his blog on the New York Times website. He also asked readers to post their ideas and told them that their posts would be a public service. Now, here's another column that's also caused some outrage. The title, To Save America, we need to have another 9/11. Listen to this. Let me read you some of this. America's fabric is pulling apart like a cheap sweater. What would sew us back together? Another 9/11 attack. That was from Stu Bykowski of the Philadelphia Daily News. Now, I've got somebody here who's just a little bit furious about both of those pieces. Kevin McCullough, who called them treasonous in his own column for townhall.com. By the way, he's also the author of Musclehead Revolution, Overturning Liberalism with Common Sense Thinking. So I guess we know where you're coming from. Why are you so riled up about these two articles?
Well, I think that it's irresponsible journalism, and the columnist didn't bother me as greatly as it did the lack of action on the editor's portion of these two papers. There was also a cartoon that ran in the Washington Post this last week, same type of idea, mocking the heroism and the courage of the passengers on United 93.
Why do you think they're doing this?
I think one of many reasons. Maybe they just don't think that there's a legitimate terror threat that we're still under in America, so it's become, intellectual hash, if you will, of the day, something fun, titillating to talk about. I certainly think that Levitt's column had a lot of that in it.
Well, by the way, we tried to invite both Levitt and Bykowski, and they were not able to join us here on the show. We were just looking at some pictures there of what 9/11 looked like. It's still very sensitive to many Americans, but a lot of people are saying it's because we've become almost too complacent that we need to start thinking about it again. Can you understand that point of view?
No. And if we've become too complacent, or as Bukowski tried to argue, that we've become too divided, the issue is because there's a lot of political interests that have seen to it that we've watered the issue down and forgotten the real human impact of it. But you drive down the West Side Highway here in Manhattan, and you see the hole that I see on a regular basis that's not filled, and there is something very real that we must never forget.
I get it, but would you say we shouldn't even talk about it at all, or we should hold it in some kind of esteem?
I don't even begrudge Levitt the discussion, but be responsible in what you're doing. For instance, instead of posting your postulations on his blog, he should have said, well, if you'll send me your suggestions, I will send them on to Homeland Security or to the Pentagon. We will try to outthink the next move that the terrorists are going to make. But to put it in public domain is irresponsible.
Do you think he was doing it, as they often say, to sell papers, to titillate? Or do you think he was just really mean-spirited about something like this? You know, one of those...
Well, I don't want to judge his motives. I'm not going to say he's not American. I'm going to say that the way he wrote the blog post, it was like this titillating, fascinating wet dream that he had about what could possibly be done. Irresponsible, more irresponsible on the part of the editors to let it run.
All right. Kevin, we thank you. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. As a matter of fact, hang on for a moment, because I want to bring in a couple of more guests to talk about this a little bit, just to weigh in from different perspectives. Mark Smith, we've had him on before. He's a commentator and constitutional attorney. And, of course, Stephanie Miller is a radio talk show host, and she's good enough to join us as well. Mark, let's start with you. Do you agree with what he's saying about Levitt and Bykowski? Do you think they were irresponsible?
I think they were irresponsible. I don't think they did anything that was criminal or treasonous or anything like that. I think they exercised bad judgment. I think that any time you're essentially trying to do the work of terrorists, to say, hey, let's give them some great ideas, I think that's just poor judgment. And with respect to Stu Bukowski's views, look, we don't need another 9/11. But there's one point that's kind of interesting. I've often made the point on this very show, in fact, that George W. Bush is a victim of his success, because by stopping the terrorists since 9/11, I think a lot of Americans have forgotten or failed to realize it's still a very real threat that allows people like John Edwards to say that the war on terror is nothing more than a bumper sticker slogan, when in reality it's a very real danger. And certainly by no terrorist attack allows that sort of complacency to be perpetuated.
And not to mention the famous line about that we should continue to go shopping, which is something that is problematic when you look at it in hindsight. Stephanie Miller joining us as well. Stephanie, mountain out of a molehill, or is this something serious?
Well, I think Karl Rove must have given him a page out of his playbook before he left, Rick, because this is what the Republicans do to me. This is not a liberal thing. This is fear-mongering. This is, this is Dick Cheney and this is Rudy Giuliani saying, we might have another 9/11, and you know what? Terrorists will kill you. We will have another 9/11 if you vote for a Democrat.
So you're saying this is
the same fear-mongering that this administration uses. It's like, wouldn't this be great? Wouldn't it bring us all together? And wouldn't you have to vote for Republicans?
I think the key, the theme that she's bringing up, Kevin, is the exploitation of 9/11. You buy it? And it's not only these writers who may be guilty of it, but some of the folks in your party.
I'm not a registered Republican to start off with, so for her to assume that would be incorrect. But I will say the potential for exploitation runs both ways. There's a difference in that, though, in saying let's publicly comment on the New York Times pages, which has already run stories outing our strategies on how to freeze terrorist financing and the fact that we're tapping terrorist cell phone calls for the purpose of stopping future attacks. The New York Times has a poor record of defending our country when they've had the chance to side with the terrorists they have in the past. Why should I not be riled up that they're the ones running the open discussion on terror tactics?
Mark, go ahead.
It's interesting. Stephanie Miller actually proves a great point. Stephanie Miller and people like her on the left, also known to me as the Surrender Party, demonstrates why another 9/11 attack wouldn't really matter in America, because we'd still have half the country, including Stephanie, saying that Karl Rove was behind it. And therefore, I don't see how it would bring the country together if we had another 9/11 attack. And Stephanie,
let's give Stephanie a chance to respond to that, shall we?
I, like most Democrats, want to be killed by a terrorist. Come on, how is this different than Tommy Thompson when he resigned saying, you know what, if I were a terrorist, I'd hit the food supply. It's wide open. He was the director of Health and Human Services. Do you think these terrorists can't think of this stuff on their own?
Stephanie, we're going to have to leave it there no matter who's thinking it. Kevin, Donna, Mark Smith, Stephanie Miller, my thanks to all three of you for being with us.
Thanks, Rick.